Follow every step. Twin AlphaKings relentlessly trained the Virgin Omega. The moon hung low over the jagged mountains, casting silver light over the black stone towers of the twin castles. A cold wind whispered through the forests, carrying the scent of pine and an ancient magic that had never left these lands. Within the heart of the Twin Kingdoms, Kale and Riven, the Alpha Kings, waited for the arrival of someone who would change their fate forever. Lyra had never seen a place like this. As the carriage wound along the narrow path leading to the castle, her hands clutched the seat, knuckles white. Her eyes traced the high walls, the banners fluttering in the wind, and the dark spires that seemed to pierce the night sky. The villagers had whispered tales about this place, stories of kings who commanded storms, brothers who could bend fire and shadow to their will, and an Omega whose arrival would either save or doom the kingdom. Now, she was here. The carriage came to a halt, and the gates opened silently. Guards clad in black and silver stood like statues, eyes unblinking. Lyra stepped out, the gravel crunching beneath her shoes. Every nerve in her body tightened. She felt both fear and a strange pull, as if the castle itself called to her. Inside, the air smelled of burning candles and cold stone. Kale stood in the main hall, his figure tall and rigid, like a blade of steel. His eyes were sharp, dark, and piercing, scanning her with an intensity that made her stomach twist. Beside him, Riven's stance was different, looser, fiery, and unpredictable. His hair fell over one eye, and a shadow of a smile tugged at his lips as he studied her. "You are Lyra," Kale said, his voice low and steady. "Do you know why you have been brought here?" Lyra swallowed. I was told to come. To serve, to learn." Riven stepped forward, his tone softer, but no less commanding. "Learning is only part of it. Here, you will discover what you are and what you are capable of. You will follow every step, or you will fail." Lyra's heart raced. She did not understand what they meant, but a small, unshakable part of her knew she had no choice. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "I will. Try." Kale's gaze softened slightly, but only for a moment. Try is not enough. You must obey. You must endure. And you must face the power that lies within you. Riven's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "And you will also discover the truth about us, if you survive the trials." They led her through the corridors of the castle. Tapestries depicting past battles and royal decrees lined the walls, their threads shimmering faintly with magic. Lyra felt the air thicken with energy. It was heavy, like the weight of history pressing down on her. Every step echoed against stone, reminding her that this was no ordinary place. The first test was simple in words, but impossible in spirit. She was taken to the training hall, a vast chamber where light from floating crystals flickered across polished floors. Kale placed his hand on her shoulder, steady and firm. "Control yourself. You will not resist what comes, but you must remain aware. Fear is your enemy." Riven circled her like a shadow. "Your power is unpredictable. You may not understand it yet, but it will shape everything you do. Follow our steps. Trust us, or it will consume you." Lyra's mind swirled with confusion. She felt a warmth inside her chest, a strange pulse that quickened with every heartbeat. When she raised her hand, the air shimmered, responding to her will but not perfectly. Sparks of light danced unevenly, flickering dangerously. Kale's voice was calm but sharp. "Focus. Center yourself. Your power is a tool, not a weapon. You must learn to command it, not let it command you." Riven leaned close. "And remember, Lyra, you are not alone. We will guide you, even if we must push you to your limits." For hours she practiced. The sparks grew steadier, the pulse in her chest slower, steadier, until she could control the energy without it lashing out. But each attempt left her trembling. Exhaustion pressed on her limbs, yet her mind refused to rest. The twins did not tire. They watched, corrected, challenged, and praised in a single glance, as if they were one mind in two bodies. That night, Lyra could not sleep. She wandered the castle halls, drawn to a library tucked in the highest tower. The air smelled of old parchment and candle wax. She ran her fingers across the spines of ancient books, stopping at one that seemed to hum under her touch. It was a prophecy, written in faded ink and old runes. The Omega who walks between two kings may either break or bind the shadows that haunt this land. Shadows stirred at the edges of the room, long and curling like fingers. A voice whispered in the dark, unintelligible but filled with promise and warning. She felt the weight of destiny pressing down on her, heavier than any stone in the castle walls. Suddenly, movement in the corner of her eye made her turn. A figure cloaked in darkness stood at the entrance. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving only a chill in the air and a sense that Lyra had been watched. The next morning, Cale found her still in the library, eyes wide and restless. "You were wandering," he said, tone neutral, though a hint of concern lingered. "Curiosity can be dangerous in this place." I just wanted to understand," Lyra whispered, "to know why I'm here and what I am supposed to do." Riven appeared behind Cale, arms crossed, a faint smirk on his face. "Understanding comes with time. Obedience comes with training. And trust. Trust comes last." Lyra looked at both of them, feeling an unspoken tension. She understood one thing clearly. This was not just training. It was a test of will, heart, and destiny. And in their eyes, she saw not only command but a challenge. Could she rise to meet it? The training continued. Days blurred into nights, each step more grueling than the last. The twins pushed her to limits she had never known. Her body ached, her mind burned, but through it all, the warmth inside her chest, her power, grew stronger. Every time she faltered, Cale's hand steadied her. Every time fear rose, Riven's presence anchored her. But power is never without consequence. One evening she was practicing alone in the courtyard, the moon casting silver light over the frost-covered stones. A wind rose suddenly, carrying whispers she could not understand. Shadows curled and danced around her feet, drawn to her growing energy. Lyra raised her hands instinctively, trying to push the darkness away, but the shadows resisted, bending and twisting toward her. A scream tore through the night, echoing across the mountains. Lyra froze. From the shadows a figure emerged, tall, cloaked, and faceless. Every instinct screamed for her to flee, but her feet did not move. She felt her power surge, a tidal force she could barely control. The figure paused as if curious, then disappeared into the night, leaving a trail of frost in its wake. When Cale and Riven arrived, they found her standing in the cold, breathless hair and cloak whipped by the wind. "You felt it," Cale said softly, almost to himself. "The prophecy is awakening sooner than we feared." Riven's eyes were sharp, scanning her, the courtyard, the shadows beyond. "And she is stronger than we imagined, stronger than either of us expected." Lyra's chest heaved. I don't understand." "Was that a test?" Cale shook his head. "No, that was a warning." Riven placed a hand on her shoulder, firm but protective. "Follow every step, Lyra, every step. The moment you falter, the darkness will consume more than you. But if you endure, if you walk the path we set, you may save what none of us can save alone." Lyra swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her destiny pressed down on her. She nodded, though her heart trembled. Every step forward would be dangerous, every choice heavy with consequence. And yet she felt a spark of resolve, a seed of courage that the darkness could not snuff out. Above, the moon shone through the clouds, silver and cold. The castle walls seemed to pulse with anticipation. Somewhere in the shadows, unseen eyes watched her, waiting. Then Lyra understood with a clarity that chilled her and strengthened her all at once. Her journey had already begun, and there was no turning back. The first light of dawn painted the castle towers in soft gold, yet the halls remained cold and still. Lyra awoke to the echo of distant footsteps. The twins had already begun their day, their presence filling the corridors with a quiet authority that made her pulse quicken. Today would not be ordinary. Kale entered the training hall first, his cloak brushing the floor like a shadow. He did not speak at once. Instead, he observed Lyra with the careful scrutiny of a master studying a student who might surpass him. Riven appeared moments later, a breeze of fire and unpredictability. Together they were a storm and a glacier, forcing her to navigate between extremes she barely understood. "Today," Kale began, his voice low, deliberate, "you will face a challenge unlike any before. Your power is not yet yours. You must bend it, not break it. Do you understand?" Lyra nodded, her hands tightening into fists. "I will do my best." Riven smirked, stepping close enough that his shadow merged with hers. "Best is only the beginning. Every step you follow must be exact. One misstep, and the consequences are not yours alone." The first trial was physical, but not as she imagined. Instead of weapons or battle, they led her into the courtyard of the castle at dawn, where frost still clung to the stones. The ground was littered with crystals, each humming faintly with energy. The twins explained that these were not ordinary crystals. They were conduits of magic, sensitive to emotion, thought, and will. Lyra was to move through them, controlling her power to avoid shattering their delicate energy. As she stepped forward, a tremor of fear passed through her. Her first step caused a crystal to crack, sending a jolt of light into the air. Kale's expression was unreadable. Riven's eyes flickered with warning.
"Concentrate," Kale commanded. "Feel, don't fight."
"The power is part of you. You cannot command it if you resist it." Lyra inhaled, closing her eyes. She let her heartbeat guide her, feeling the pulse of energy beneath her feet. Slowly she moved, step by step, and the crystals hummed instead of shattering. A small thrill of victory lifted her chest, only to be replaced by the twin weight of expectation. "Good," Riven said softly, but there was no warmth in his voice, only the fire of challenge. "Now, go faster. Make it precise." Hours passed as she walked, stumbled, rose, and walked again. Each step carried more meaning than the last. She began to understand that the trial was not just about control. It was about discipline, patience, and the willingness to endure without knowing the end. By midday, sweat and frost mixed upon her skin. Her muscles screamed, but she pressed on. The twins watched silently, Kale's gaze sharp and calculating, Riven's alive with a restless energy. When she finally completed the path without error, she felt a surge of pride, though it was tempered by exhaustion. Kale spoke first, his voice quiet but strong. "You are stronger than I expected, Lyra, but strength alone is not enough. You must also understand the shadows that follow you." "The shadows?" she asked, breathless. Riven stepped closer, letting his hand hover near hers without touching. "The magic within you, it does not exist in isolation. It stirs the forces that lie beneath the castle, in the forests, and in the air itself. If you cannot command it, you will unleash more than just light or power. You will awaken what should remain sleeping." Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. Even as she struggled to catch her breath, she understood the warning. Her power, her presence, was not merely a gift. It was a responsibility that could either protect or destroy. The afternoon brought a new kind of trial, the mental challenge. Kale and Riven led her to the Hall of Mirrors, a long chamber lined with silver glass that reflected not only her image but echoes of the past, visions of fear, and shadows that whispered secrets.
"You will confront yourself here," Kale said.
"And in doing so, you will confront us, your masters, and your destiny. Step carefully. Your mind is as fragile as your body, but just as powerful." Lyra stepped inside. The mirrors seemed to ripple, showing not only her reflection but fragments of Kale and Riven, sometimes separate, sometimes merging into a single figure she could not distinguish. The reflections moved independently, mimicking her fears, doubts, and hidden desires. At first, she faltered. She saw herself failing, lost, abandoned, powerless. Shadows reached for her from the glass, whispers curling like smoke. Her chest tightened. Then, a thought rose like a spark. "I can control this. I am not powerless. She focused, remembering the lessons from the crystals, the weight of the twins' expectations, and the warmth that had anchored her in the darkness. Slowly, she raised her hands, and the shadows recoiled. The reflections in the mirrors wavered, then steadied. Lyra's image no longer trembled. It shone with a quiet light that illuminated the chamber. Cale nodded almost imperceptibly, and Riven's smirk softened into something that resembled pride. "You see," Cale said quietly, "control is not domination, it is understanding." "And understanding," Riven added, "comes from facing the truth of yourself without fear." The day drew to a close, but the trials did not end. That night Lyra dreamed vividly. She wandered through the forest surrounding the twin castles. The trees twisted like gnarled fingers, their branches whispering secrets she could not fully comprehend. A shadow moved among them, watching. She called out, but no sound came. Then a figure stepped forward. A twin, but both Cale and Riven at once. Their faces merged in impossible. "You are stronger than you know," the shadow whispered. "But the path will demand more than strength. It will demand choice, and every choice will bind you more tightly to us, or break you entirely." Lyra woke with a start, heart racing, sweat cooling on her skin. She realized the twins' training was not merely about physical skill or control of magic. It was about forging her will, testing her courage, and preparing her for a destiny intertwined with theirs. The next morning the courtyard was covered in frost, glittering like diamonds under the early sun. Cale and Riven awaited her, silent and imposing. "You have rested," Cale said. "Good. Today, the trial of trust begins." Lyra followed them into the shadowed forest beyond the castle walls. The trees were ancient, their bark twisted and dark, and the air was thick with magic. Cale led the way, Riven followed, and Lyra was in the middle, walking the line between them, her heart pounding with anticipation. The trial was simple in explanation, but terrifying in execution. Lyra had to follow every step exactly as the twins instructed, blindfolded. One misstep could awaken the dormant magic that slumbered in the forest, and she would not know until it was too late. Her hands were guided by Cale, her ears attuned to Riven's subtle commands. Each step was a test of trust, patience, and instinct. The forest seemed alive, every shadow moving as if to watch her, every whisper of wind carrying warning. At first, fear took hold. Lyra stumbled over roots, her mind imagining dangers she could not see. The twins' voices steadied her, calm and commanding. She focused, closing her eyes fully, trusting them completely, and moving as they guided. Time lost meaning. The forest shifted, light and shadow intertwining. Lyra's steps became confident, sure, guided not only by the twins' commands but by the bond she felt growing between them. She realized that following every step was not about obedience. It was about trust, connection, and understanding the rhythm of power around her. Suddenly, a low growl broke the silence. Shadows coalesced into shapes, moving toward her. Lyra froze, but Cale's hand gripped hers, and Riven's voice cut through her fear. "Step forward. Do not falter." With trembling legs, she obeyed. The shapes swirled, paused, and then retreated as she stepped through. She opened her eyes, and the forest seemed to hold its breath, the danger passing. Cale's gaze met hers, sharp and unreadable. Riven's smirk returned, softer now, almost teasing. "You are learning," Cale said. "But this is only the beginning. The path is far longer and far darker." Lyra's chest heaved. She felt exhaustion and triumph, fear and exhilaration, all at once. The twins' power, their presence, the magic of the forest, it all pressed against her senses. She realized the prophecy was not a warning only for the future. It was alive now, in every step she took, in every breath she drew. As they returned to the castle, Lyra glanced back at the shadowed trees. A figure lingered among them, barely visible, watching, waiting. And for the first time she understood something terrifying and exhilarating. Following every step was not a choice, it was a necessity. And the first choice she had made had already begun to bind her to the fate of the twin Alpha Kings. The castle had grown silent. Even the servants whispered less, as though the air itself feared to stir. Lyra had learned to read the shadows now, to feel the subtle pulse of magic beneath the stone floors. Yet nothing she had faced prepared her for what awaited in the heart of shadows. A chamber deep beneath the twin castles, where light seemed to struggle and darkness moved like living water. Kael led the way, his cloak brushing the walls like a shadow itself. Riven followed, steps light, eyes scanning every corner as if he could see what hid behind the darkness. Lyra walked between them, her pulse quickening. Her power hummed in response to the thick magic in the air, and a shiver ran down her spine. "This is where your true test begins," Kael said, voice steady but heavy. "Not of strength, not of skill, but of understanding. You must face the shadow within yourself, and the shadows that bind us." Lyra swallowed. Her body was tired from endless training, her mind heavy with visions and whispers, yet she felt a strange determination settle in her chest. She had come this far. She could not turn back now. The chamber was vast, circular, and lined with black stone that absorbed even the faintest light. In the center, a pool of dark water rippled without wind. Kael gestured toward it. "Look into the water. See what lies beneath your surface. Only by knowing your heart can you control the power within you." Lyra stepped forward, her reflection trembling in the water. At first, she saw only herself, pale and weary, hair damp with sweat from training. Then the surface shifted, and she saw the faces of Kael and Riven. Sometimes they merged, sometimes they stood apart, and sometimes their eyes seemed to pierce through her very soul. A whisper rose from the water. Soft but urgent. "Choose. Follow or break." Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to run, to flee into the corridors of the castle, but she forced herself to kneel at the pool's edge. Slowly the reflection spoke, not in words, but in feelings. She felt Kael's discipline, his silent demand for control, and Riven's fire, his insistence on instinct and courage. Their essence mingled with hers in the rippling water, and she realized that every choice she had made so far had bound her closer to them, and to the magic she barely understood. "Your heart will guide your power," Kael said from the shadows. "If it falters, the darkness will consume you. And if it fails, it will consume us all." Riven stepped beside her, hand hovering above the water without touching it. "You are not just a student anymore. You are part of this, part of us. Every choice, every step binds you further. And yet you may also free us." Lyra trembled. She had followed their steps, endured their trials, and trusted them even when fear clawed at her. But now she faced the most dangerous challenge, to see the truth of herself without flinching, and to accept the shadow she carried within. The water stirred, and suddenly Lyra was no longer alone. Figures emerged, formed from shadow and mist, twisting into shapes that mirrored her fears. Failure, doubt, isolation. They circled her, whispering voices that echoed through the chamber. "You are weak," one hissed. "You cannot control them," another intoned. "You are nothing." Lyra's knees buckled. Her hands shook, and her heart pounded so loudly she thought the chamber would hear it. She closed her eyes, took a slow, deliberate breath, and remembered the lessons of the crystals, the forest, and the Hall of Mirrors. Focus. Center yourself. Trust. She stretched out her hands, letting her power flow not as force, but as understanding. The shadows wavered, hesitated, and then recoiled, as if burned by her light. The water calmed, reflecting only her determined gaze, and then, flickering at the edges, the twins' faces appeared, watching her, proud and expectant. "You see," Kael said softly, "strength is nothing without clarity. Control is meaningless without heart. And courage is nothing without trust," Riven added. His voice had softened, carrying something rare, admiration, and perhaps something more. Lyra rose to her feet. She felt the weight of power in her chest, not fear, not panic, but a steady, burning confidence. She understood for the first time that the path she walked was not one she could avoid. She must walk it fully, for herself and for the twin kings who had claimed her as part of their destiny. Kale and Riven moved closer, their presence anchoring her. "You have faced the first shadow," Kale said, "but the curse that haunts our bloodline is older and deeper. You must understand it if we are to survive. The curse, is it but something I can fight?" Riven's eyes flickered, shadows dancing across his features. "You do not fight it alone. You are part of the chain that can break it, or strengthen it. Every choice binds us together. Every step you follow is part of the path." The chamber grew darker, and the water began to swirl. From its depths, shapes emerged, twisted, shadowed creatures, their eyes glowing faintly, faces indistinct but filled with malice. The twins stepped back, allowing Lyra to act. Her hands rose instinctively, and the energy that had grown through days of trials surged outward. The shadows writhed, testing her control. Lyra forced herself to focus, each movement precise, each thought deliberate. Slowly, the shadows began to shrink, folding into themselves, until the water was still once more. Exhausted, she sank to her knees, breathing heavily. Kale knelt beside her, hand on her shoulder. "You did not falter. You controlled what none could alone." "That is no small feat." Riven crouched on the other side, smirk softening into a smile. "You are learning faster than I imagined." Faster than even he imagined. Lyra's chest heaved, not from the battle but from the weight of realization. She had not only faced shadows, they had faced her. And in doing so, they had awakened something within her that was neither fear nor anger, but purpose. Yet the victory was fragile. Kale's eyes darkened as he looked into hers. "The curse, it is stirring. And we do not know how long we have before it seeks to claim what is ours." Riven's smile vanished, replaced by a rare seriousness. "And there are others who watch us, waiting. Ones who do not forgive weakness. You must remain vigilant, Lyra, for your own safety and for ours." The chamber fell silent, save for the soft hum of the magical water. Lyra looked between the twins, their faces illuminated by faint light. She felt the bond between them, fragile yet unbreakable, and a strange warmth rose in her chest. The connection was more than guidance. It was trust, loyalty, and something that neither time nor fear could diminish. As they left the heart of shadows, Lyra's mind raced. She had endured pain, fear, and uncertainty, yet she had also discovered strength, connection, and a courage she had never known. She realized the path was no longer about obedience alone. It was about understanding herself, the twins, and the forces that bound them together. But the shadows had not forgotten. Outside the castle, the wind carried whispers she could not fully hear. Figures moved beyond the walls, hidden in the forests, watching and waiting. The prophecy that had haunted her thoughts now seemed alive, threading through every heartbeat, every step. The Omega who walks between two kings may either break or bind the shadows that haunt this land. Lyra knew that following every step was no longer a test. It was survival. And the deeper she walked into the twins' world, the closer she came to a truth she was not yet ready to face. That the bond she shared with Kale and Riven was as dangerous as it was necessary, as beautiful as it was terrifying.
That night, she could not sleep.
She wandered the castle terraces, moonlight painting the stones silver. Somewhere in the distance, a shadow moved, watching her. She felt a chill run through her, and her chest tightened with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Kale appeared silently at her side, Riven stepping out from the shadows behind her. "The darkness waits," Kale said quietly. "But so do we. You are no longer merely an Omega to be trained. You are a force in your own right." "Do you understand what that means?" Lyra nodded slowly, though her heart pounded. "It means every choice matters. Every step I take is part of the path." Riven's hand brushed her shoulder lightly, almost teasing, almost protective. "And the next steps will be far harder, far darker. But we will be with you, if you can trust yourself enough to follow them." The wind carried a new whisper, faint but clear. The shadows are awakening, and one choice will change everything. Lyra shivered, knowing the trials ahead would test not only her power, but her heart. She had survived the first shadows, but the true darkness, the curse that bound the twins and the Omega together, was only beginning to stir. And for the first time she understood fully that the path she walked was no longer just about training, or obedience, or survival. It was about destiny. And destiny demanded courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to follow every step, no matter where it led. The first light of dawn barely touched the peaks of the mountains, yet the twin castles were already awake with a restless energy. Deep within the castle and the chambers below the stone floors, Lyra stood at the edge of the Hall of Shadows, feeling the pulse of magic under her feet. Every heartbeat resonated with the curse that had haunted Cale and Ribbon's family for centuries. Tonight, it would reach its peak. Tonight she would face it fully, or risk losing everything. Cale and Ribbon emerged from the darkness, their presence as commanding and contrasting as ever. Cale's gaze was steady and cold, like steel tempered in fire. Ribbon's was a spark of restless flame, alert and alive. Lyra felt the weight of both upon her, heavy but not crushing. She had walked countless steps, endured countless trials, and yet this was the moment where her choices would truly matter. "The curse awakens," Cale said softly, his voice carrying more gravity than ever. "It feeds on fear, doubt, and hesitation. Tonight you must confront it, Lyra, not as a student, but as an equal. You must follow every step perfectly." Riven stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "And remember, you are not alone. We are bound to you as much as you are bound to us. Do not falter, and the darkness may be broken." Lyra nodded, her pulse racing. She had spent days learning to control her power, understanding herself, and trusting the twins. She felt the strength within her now, not reckless strength, but calm, deliberate, and focused. Every lesson, every trial, every shadow she had faced had led her here. The Hall of Shadows was vast, circular, and lined with reflective black stone that absorbed even the faintest light. In the center, a pool of dark water shimmered, rippling with unseen movement. Cale and Riven stepped to either side of it, their forms mirrored in its surface. Lyra approached carefully, feeling the energy thrumming beneath her feet. The curse had begun to stir, dark shapes forming in the water, twisting and writhing as if alive. Their whispers slithered around her, murmuring fear, doubt, and power. "You are ready," Cale said quietly. "But you must face the heart of it. The curse feeds on the ties that bind us. You must break it without breaking yourself, or us." Ribbon's voice followed immediately, sharper, firmer. "Focus your power. Follow every step. Trust the bond we share." Lyra took a deep breath and extended her hands toward the water. The shadows reacted instantly, moving toward her like a wave. At first, her control faltered, and a swirl of black smoke rose from the pool. Panic threatened to overtake her, but she remembered the lessons of the crystals, the forest, and the mirrors. She remembered Cale's steady hand and Ribbon's fiery guidance. She remembered the trust they had built. She inhaled, centering herself. Her power flowed outward, not as force, but as understanding. Light met shadow, warmth met cold, and the pool stilled. The dark shapes shrank, twisting into harmless reflections of themselves before dissolving completely. Cale's hand brushed her shoulder lightly, approval in his rare, gentle touch. "You have done it, Lyra. You controlled the darkness without letting it consume you." Riven's grin broke across his face, soft but full of pride. "And you have grown far beyond anything we could have imagined. You are no longer a student. You are a force, and a part of us as much as we are a part of you." Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted, but the warmth of triumph spread through her chest. For the first time, she understood that the trials had not been about obedience alone. They had been about connection, trust, and understanding the delicate balance of power, heart, and destiny. Yet the victory was not complete. From the far corner of the hall, a ripple of darkness surged. The curse was not defeated, only weakened. The air thickened, and a figure emerged from the shadows. Its form was indistinct, shifting between smoke and shadow, but its eyes glowed with a malevolent intelligence. Kale and Riven moved instinctively to shield her, but Lyra stood her ground. She had learned to trust herself and the bond she shared with the twins. She raised her hands, and the energy inside her responded like never before. The shadow advanced, its whispers twisting into sharp, biting words. "You are too weak, too small. You cannot end me." Lyra felt the power rise in her chest, steady and controlled. She let it flow outward, not to strike, but to command. The shadow faltered, resisting, then recoiled as her light and intention filled the hall. The twins joined her, their energy merging with hers, creating a force stronger than any single power in the kingdom. Together, the three of them moved as one. Kale's discipline directed the flow, Riven's intuition guided its path, and Lyra's courage anchored the force. The shadows twisted, shrieked, and then dissolved, leaving the hall silent and still. Lyra fell to her knees again, tears of relief streaming down her face. Kale knelt beside her, his hand firm on her back, steadying her. Riven crouched on the other side, his fingers brushing her hair back from her face. They were silent for a moment, the three of them breathing in unison, connected in a way words could not describe. "You have done it," Kale whispered. "The curse, it is broken. Or at least, it is bound no longer. It will not claim our bloodline again. Not while we stand together." Riven's voice was quieter now, almost vulnerable. "And you, Lyra, you are no longer simply an Omega. You are our equal, our bond, our strength. Never forget that." Lyra looked at them, awe and relief flooding her. She had faced the darkness, the curse, and the shadows of her own fears. She had learned to trust, to act, and to believe in herself. And in doing so, she had formed a bond with Kale and Riven that was unbreakable. The castle seemed to exhale around them, the weight of ancient magic lifting. The halls were no longer tense, the shadows no longer whispered threats. Light returned to the corners, soft and warm. That evening, the three of them stood on the highest terrace overlooking the kingdom. The sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in gold and crimson. The wind carried the scent of pine and distant rivers. Lyra felt the connection to Kale and Riven, not as master and student, not as Alpha and Omega, but as equals walking the same path together. Kale's hand brushed hers, firm but gentle. "The path does not end here. But now you can walk it freely, together." Riven stepped closer, his smile teasing yet filled with emotion. "And no shadow can stop us if we follow every step, together." Lyra breathed deeply, feeling a peace she had never known. The trials had been long, the nights filled with fear, doubt, and the pull of destiny. Yet she had endured, learned, and grown. She was no longer the timid girl who had arrived at the castle weeks before. She was strong, confident, and bound by trust, love, and courage to the two men who had guided her, and who now stood beside her not as teachers, but as companions, equals, and protectors. As darkness fell, a faint shimmer appeared on the horizon, like the distant eyes of something watching. Lyra's pulse quickened, but not with fear. She had learned to face the unknown, to trust her strength and the bond she shared with Kale and Riven. Whatever came next, she knew they would face it together. And for the first time she smiled freely, knowing that the path she had walked, the steps she had followed, had not only saved the kingdom, but had transformed her. She was no longer bound by fear. She was no longer bound by the shadows. She was the Omega who walked between two kings, and she had the power to shape her destiny. Kale's voice broke the silence, low and steady. "Lyra, you have changed everything. For all of us." Riven added softly, almost a whisper, "And the world will never be the same again." Lyra looked between them, her heart full of hope and courage. The trials were over, but the journey would continue. Together they would face whatever shadows arose, whatever storms came. The bonds they had forged were unbreakable, the power they shared unmatched, and the trust between them absolute. Above them the stars began to shine. The moon rose high, silver and calm, as if to witness their triumph. And in that moment Lyra knew one truth more clearly than any prophecy. She had walked every step, endured every trial, and emerged not just as a survivor, but as a force of light, courage, and unshakable bond. The kingdom was safe, for now. The shadows had been faced, the curse bound, and the Omega who had once trembled under the weight of destiny now stood tall, radiant, and ready to face whatever lay beyond the horizon, side by side with the twin Alpha Kings who had become her strength, her family, and her home.